All right, welcome back, everybody. Episode number 41 of the Plumecast, my weekly gaming news podcast, where I just talk about stuff going on within the video game industry, things I wasn't able to get to throughout the week. So if this is your first time here, thank you for stopping by. If you enjoy what you see, make sure to go check out my channel as I do release daily gaming videos. And hey, if you find it entertaining, you find it informative, consider that subscribe button just to help this community grow and hopefully continue to grow this community, because so far it's been a lot of fun and it's an awesome community. We have great conversations in the comments, or at least I read great conversations in the comments. So it's been a lot of fun so far. So we're here for another episode, another week. And as always on the Plumecast, I have a drink. This week's a little bit different. I am not drinking beer this week, just don't have too much selection right now in my fridge, and I haven't been able to get out and buy a bunch more. So I'm actually just having some whiskey and some soda water with some like flavoring in it. So nothing too special. I drink lots of different whiskeys, but I guess my cheap go-to would be like Jameson. So that's what I'm drinking right now. Let me know what you guys are drinking in the comments below. Beer, coffee, Coke, anything, whatever you guys are drinking. What do you have when you enjoy and play video games? We'll love to know what you guys are doing, what you're drinking. So in terms of games that I'm playing or that I've been playing this week, pretty much the same as last week. Elden Ring. I mean, I talked a decent amount about Elden Ring in the last episode, and it's an amazing game. It really, really is. It's not a perfect game. It's not a 10 out of 10. There are definitely issues there, and I don't agree with the perfect scores for it, but it's an incredible game with just like wondrous exploration. Like every time you see something in the distance, you go there. If you don't die 100 times before getting to where you want to go, but it's very rewarding and you're finding stuff to help you progress through the game all the time. I'm about 45 hours in now and enjoying it. And it's getting easier because I'm upgrading my character. I'm reinforcing my weapons. Like I'm using the golden halberd right now, which I hear is one of the best weapons in the game, but I got that actually very early and I had to upgrade my strength a ton before I was able to use it. But yeah, it's a very, very fun game. If you've never played a Souls game before, you've never checked out that series, it's definitely not for everybody. I can completely understand why people hate it, why people just don't want to play. They don't want to die hundreds of times. And I was kind of like that until I finally played the first Dark Souls Remastered, and went through that and really enjoyed my time with it. Even though I died so many times, it was super rewarding to get through areas and to beat bosses. That's what was the draw to me. And Elden Ring really is no different, but it's definitely frustrating at times, and I can get why people don't want to get into it and play. But it's very, very cool. There's no hand holding. It reminds me of like the older styles of RPGs, a little bit of like that Zelda in there with just kind of no hand holding. You gotta upgrade and find things in order to advance to the next area. And I do love Zelda, one of my favorite franchises of all time. I know people don't always like that comparison, but it kind of does remind me a bit of it. But anyways, yeah, Elden Ring and some more Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Very cool DLC. Definitely recommended if you like the Assassin's Creed series. If you liked Valhalla, Dawn of Ragnarok is a lot of fun. The new enemies are cool. The new areas, it's just really nice looking. And I think they did a good job with it. I really do. And the story so far has been very, very good. So I know that game's gotten some weird reviews, like some good, some bad. And some of the reviews that are bad, people are complaining that it's just more Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which I mean, it's DLC for a game. So what did you expect it to be? But yeah, I do recommend it if you, like I said, liked the base game. If you enjoy the base game, you'll definitely like Dawn of Ragnarok. And then the third game I've been playing is a game that I've been looking forward to for a while, and that is Shredders. So Shredders is awesome. Like Shredders, I've been playing it a lot over the last couple of days, and it's pretty much exactly what I expected it and wanted it to be, which is just a simulation snowboarding game with good physics that isn't too crazy over the top. You're going to fall a lot, but when you land just like, I don't know, a basic rodeo indie or something, or you hit like a 900 or a 1080, it just feels so good because of the physics, I think, in the game. And it seems like something that could actually potentially be pulled off in real life, which is different because a lot of the snowboarding games we've gotten recently, or we haven't really gotten that many, but the other one is Riders Republic, which is a game that has a variety of different extreme sports in it, even like biking and wingsuits and rocket suits and snowmobiles and all that type of stuff. It's very arcadey, so the tricks you're doing in that don't really like represent what could be happening in real life. And that's not bad either, because I love like the SSX series. I actually was jumping into that as well. And I would love to get another SSX series, but it's nice to have like that arcadey extreme sports, snowboarding, skateboarding. So the skateboard one would be like Tony Hawk, and then having the more simulation realistic one like Shredders. And then comparison to that would be like the skate series, which skate series is one of my favorite of all time. And it's, I guess, like, it seems like the snowboarding version of skate. I guess that's the best way to kind of explain what Shredders is. And what's also really funny about Shredders is you can tell it's not made by a huge studio, just with the lack of faces in the game. Everyone's covered in like a face mask. Like when you go out, if you've snowboarded before, most people faces are fully covered anyways, and with goggles and everything, and you just kind of see like a mouth moving slightly behind the face mask. And so it's pretty funny. And the voice acting is like the corniest, cheesiest one-liners, very low, like I would say low budget voice acting in the game, but I actually like it. It's like kind of endearing in a way, and I don't know why. Like, I don't know, it's just like it's low budget in that sense, but I think like they did a great job with the physics and the overall gameplay, which is far more important. But it's just like the story and the voice acting and the one-liners when you're going through different missions, I find hilarious. And they just keep repeating it. So it can get a little bit annoying if you're trying to do the mission over and over again. You're re-shredding is what they call it, when you kind of reverse and go back and try what you weren't able to complete. And yeah, there's that. So, but then there's like the music as well, which I think is actually really good for the game. It's just very like chill, like very chill vibes to the game, where you're just sitting back and you're just snowboarding and trying to pull off tricks, and you can just do that for hours, even if you're not actually doing the missions. You don't actually have to be accomplishing anything other than just trying to hit that 1080, that 1260, that double, triple rodeo, right? Like it's really good. I'm really happy that game's on Game Pass and that it's getting exposure, because I think it deserves the exposure, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get to play Tunic yet, which is a game that I'm highly anticipating. Just been very, very busy, and that Shadow dropped on Game Pass at the ID at Xbox event, which was awesome to see, getting great reviews. I'm going to be jumping into that soon. I got to finish Elden Ring though, and I got to finish Dawn of Ragnarok. Once I finish those two games, it's like I'm going to be able to free my time up to play a lot of the other games that I've been waiting to play. It's just those two games weigh on my mind, because I don't want to leave them there, jump into something else, then end up not finishing them for months or years or whatever. So yeah, there's so many games to play. That's the issue right now. So yeah, this episode, there's a lot of little things to talk about. We're just going to jump into it. The first thing I do want to go over is talk about the Gran Turismo 7, I guess you can call it controversy or whatever you want to call it. Stuff that has been happening this week that has to do with the fact the game was unplayable for more than 24 hours. So Gran Turismo 7 has been very interesting. It's been a very, very interesting case for a lot of reasons. So firstly, before this game was released, or maybe when the embargo edit and review started coming out, we had the controversy with that Survivor website from Australia, who complained that they did not get a review code for Gran Turismo, and they thought it was because they gave Horizon Forbidden West, I think, a 6.5 out of 10, which is like one of the lowest scores that game got, and that they thought that Sony was withholding the review code for Gran Turismo 7 to artificially prop up their Metacritic score. And I did some looking into that, and it's hard for me to buy that from that website. The reasons I gave in my videos, you can go back and watch them, but the reasons I gave was because they've gotten pretty much most games. They've given the majority of the PlayStation games like 8s, 9s out of 10. And then there were other websites. There was another website that gave Horizon Forbidden West a 6 out of 10 and also got Gran Turismo review code as well. And thirdly, Survivor is not a very big website. You go look at their web traffic. You go look at how many people visit them. It's good, but it's not big. It's not like a very big one. I'd say it's like a medium to small website. And I know from experience, like I've gotten review codes, and I'm not saying I get like review codes easily or whatever. I don't. Like there's a lot of review codes I don't get. And there's just like a limited amount of review codes that these guys give out to, that these companies give out to. They give them out to all the big people, of course, but if you're like on the lower tier or the lower ring of reviewers or content creators or whatever, you're not going to get a review code for every single game from the first party and stuff. So I thought that, hey, maybe this was just them being upset that they didn't get a review code, and people were blowing this out of proportion. Now, again, I said in my other videos, I could be completely wrong on that, and maybe they purposely didn't give them the game to review because they want to prop up their Metacritic score. And I guess as the more information comes out, it could be even a higher likelihood that that was the case. So yeah, go check out those videos if you wanted my full thoughts on that. And then after that, there was the reviews that came out, and the reviews came out giving it 8s and 9s out of 10s and just really ranting, raving how great the game was. Most people said it was good. I even watched my favorite reviewer, who I think is very honest all the time, ACG, who said it was a good game. Like, he was enjoying playing it and everything like that. So it made me believe that, yeah, these reviewers probably weren't lying about the fact that the game is fun to play. Now, these review scores came out, and then after the review scores came out, Sony released the prices for the microtransactions, where cars that were like $5 in Gran Turismo Sport were like $40 now. And the microtransaction pricing was crazy. And the argument against that is, hey, you don't have to buy them. You can still earn all of these cars through playing the game. But still, at the end of the day, it's like, why are the prices of these digital assets $35 more in a game that were the exact same cars in the GT in the previous Gran Turismo game? It didn't make any sense. So that was the next controversy. And I would say that in and of itself was far worse, far bigger of a controversy than like the Survivor thing, because that clearly was Sony withholding that information from reviewers to prop up their review scores. That's, I think, without a shadow of a doubt. There's no other reason, because Sony knew that what the prices of these microtransactions were far before the reviewers got the game and before the game came out. So that was completely intentional and completely for the single purpose of making sure that those microtransaction prices were not included in the review scores, because they knew that anybody who's objective and is critical and is a good critic, like they do their job well, it's not unbiased, it would count against the overall score of the game, probably pushing it down maybe closer to like a 7 or 7.5, which would severely hurt the Metacritic score of Gran Turismo. So I thought that was way worse. Okay, so the game that happens, the game comes out and people are playing it. And then you have something like, I don't know if you guys watched the Review Tech USA video, his review on the game with his editor, and then the amount of hate that got. But I watched that entire video, and I don't always agree with everything Review Tech says. Like a lot of his videos I don't agree with, but that one, after watching that review, I was like, yeah, I mean, this makes sense. What his reviewer was saying, the reasonings why they would give it like a 6 or 6.5 out of 10. And I haven't played it, but yeah, it makes sense. You look at the graphics, the areas around the courses and stuff when you're driving through, it doesn't really look like a next generation PlayStation 5 game. And then the argument against that is it's a simulation game focused on cars, and the gameplay is good, and the aesthetics with the cars are good, and that type of stuff. So I'm like, okay, whatever. If you really love and just want to focus on driving the car and everything and just the gameplay, I'm sure there's fun to be had with this game. I mean, I'm sure it's still a great game to play. I get that. But for a game to be getting 9s, 9.5s, 8.5s out of 10, you expect there to be more. You expect this to be an advancement from the previous game in terms of the menus, in terms of the exterior lighting and the exterior graphics. Is on the PlayStation 5, right? It's not on the PS4 anymore. And one of the very interesting things that was in that video that they mentioned was that a lot of the cars were only up until 2017. Now, there were models beyond 2017, but they said a lot of them were only up to 2017, which makes you believe, hey, maybe all they did was kind of update the previous game, and that's why some of the graphics aren't up to the par and everything. So, okay, that was the next thing. And now we have this, which is another huge, I say, black mark on the game, especially because of those review scores. And this is the fact that the game was unplayable for more than 24 hours because they screwed up a patch and they had to redo a patch. And then you need to be online. You need to be connected to the internet to be able to play some of the major game modes, such as the career mode and obviously the multiplayer mode. So here's what it is. I'm just going to go through what happened here. So firstly, there was an issue found. Well, you know what? Actually, I'll just read. They finally, like hours later, maybe like a day later, I'm not sure how long after, but it was a decent amount after, because they even apologized for being quiet. They put out this apology. Polyphony put out this apology to all their users, and this is what happened. They say, I want to explain what happened in this update. Immediately before the release of the 1.07 update, we discovered an issue where the game would not start properly in some cases on product versions for the PS4 and PS5. This was a rare issue that was not seen during tests on the development hardware or the QA sessions prior to the release. But in order to prioritize the safety of the saved data of the users, we decided to interrupt the release of the 1.07 update and to make a 1.08 correctional update. This is the reason for the delay. My sincere apologies for the late report to everyone. So there you have it. There was an issue with that 1.07 update. They couldn't put it out, obviously. So they had to go through some more testing, whatever, and then put out the 1.08 update, which took a while for them to make sure that everything is good before releasing it again. So I believe here they say finally, as of 10:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Polyphony. Oh no, that's when he gave the apology for what happened. So this was at Friday at 10:45 a.m. I think that's about when you were able to log on, or maybe even a bit after that. And what you couldn't do during these maintenance period was you couldn't play your career mode, you couldn't do the multiplayer mode until the services were restored on Friday morning. And that's pretty much like the bulk. The career mode is the bulk of the game. And this is kind of just another black mark, I guess, on this game. There's been issues with it, and something like this shows that there are also, like, I guess, DRM issues, or that you have to always be online to play it. So if Polyphony or Sony at any point have an issue with the servers and they pull it off, you're literally never going to be able to play Gran Turismo 7 again. In 5 years from now, if they decide that they're done with the hosting these servers for Gran Turismo 7, it seems like you're not going to be able to play it anymore, which is, I guess, another thing with this game, that if it's a simulation game with cars, you should at all times be able to access your career mode offline and see all of the cars that you've purchased, that you've earned, and just be able to drive around tracks and have fun with it. And it seems like you're not going to be able to do that with this online feature, which is kind of terrifying for the future of video games. Because we know that, like, there's other games that are like this. This isn't the only game where you have to be connected to the internet to play. I can't think of any on the top of my mind, but it's leading us to a future where, hey, you're gonna always have to have an internet connection, even to play like single player games where you're not playing with anybody else. And that kind of sucks, because we're moving completely away. Well, we've already moved completely away from physical games to fully digital games. And I'm somebody who has completely embraced digital games now with this generation of consoles. And that's a lot for me, because I'm somebody who always only bought physical. I actually have a physical game collection from multiple generations of consoles: Xbox One, Xbox 360, original Xbox, and PS2, PS1, GameCube, Nintendo Wii, Super Nintendo. I don't know. I was blanking on the Nintendo systems there. Like, I have like a decent physical collection, not huge or anything, but I do have a physical collection. I've always loved physical games. Actually, I have a pretty good Nintendo Switch physical collection. I still buy I buy all my Nintendo Switch games physically. I don't buy any really digitally. And because you can get the full game pretty much on the cart there, and you don't really need to be connected for the majority of those games. And you can even play them without downloading that update that comes when you pop it in. At least that's what I've experienced with it. So I still buy a lot of Nintendo physical games, but in the future, I'll be able to play all those games still, because they're on the cart. In the future, for a lot of games on discs, games like Gran Turismo 7 won't be able to unless you have an internet connection. And even when you buy games on a disc right now, it's literally just a key to download it off the store. So it's kind of useless. And I feel like this is kind of bringing us to that future. This is kind of showing us what could happen, what will happen if games are always online with the DRM stuff. And it's unfortunate, but I guess this is just another black mark that nobody was able to report on in the reviews for this game. Now, it brings us to the next thing that occurred here, and it is with the microtransactions. Now, the microtransactions are still really, really high and really absurd for what they previously were. Now, I don't know if that's, like, for some people, it's not an issue. You're not going to buy any of these cars anyways. You're going to earn them, or even if you don't earn them, you don't really care. Like, for me, Personally, I think the microtransactions are way overpriced, but would I ever personally buy a $40 car in Gran Turismo 7? No, absolutely no way. And I wouldn't feel like I'm really missing out if I don't. I would just earn cars, and the cars that I was played enough to earn, those are the ones that I would use. But that's me personally. But there's people out there where this may be the only game that they play all year. And yeah, sure, they want to get some of their favorite cars that, they played all the other Gran Turismos and they expected them to be $5, and now they come on and they see that they're $40, and it would definitely ruin their experience. So they kind of give us an update too here on the microtransactions. They say, also in this update, some event rewards have been adjusted. I wanted to also explain the reason for it and our plans going forward. In GT7, I would like to have users enjoy lots of cars and races, even without microtransactions. Great. I mean, that's, I think, the goal of what people want. They don't want microtransactions. They go on to say here, at the same time, the pricing of cars is an important element that conveys their value and rarity. I mean, it's a digital asset. It's a digital asset. It's worth nothing. You're burning $40. Let's just be real. It's worth nothing. So I don't think it's important for it to be linked with the real world prices. I want to make GT7 a game in which you can enjoy a variety of cars, lots of different ways, and if possible, would like to try to avoid situations where a player must mechanically keep replaying certain events over and over again. We will, in time, let you know the update plans for additional content, additional race events, and additional features that will constructively resolve this. It pains me that I can't explain the details regarding this at this moment, but we plan on continuing to revise GT7 so that as many players as possible can enjoy the game. We would really appreciate it if everyone would watch over the growth of Gran Turismo 7 from a somewhat longer term point of view. Which that last point is very interesting, because in today's day and age for video games, I mean, that's kind of how you have to look at every single game, which is unfortunate, but most games, they have a very long-term point of view until they get to their best, their best point. I guess they're the best version of the game, which, yeah. So there you have it. So I guess with these microtransactions, they just want people to avoid situations where they must replay certain events over and over again to get a car. I guess so. So instead of doing that, they want you to just go and purchase the car. I mean, I guess that, I don't know. It doesn't really make too much sense what they're going for there, but what is unfortunate is they didn't say, hey, we realize that the microtransactions are absurd and that they are way more priced than the previous version of the games, and that we are going to reduce the microtransactions. And yeah, so they're going to be $40 and they're going to stick to that. And you know what? They probably have statistics already of people buying these microtransactions and justifying the prices of them. People are going to buy them. I mean, Gran Turismo is that type of game that it's like, I think it's a different audience than I think a lot of other games, in the sense that people who may only play Gran Turismo will buy this game. People who have that racing setup, they've been waiting for Gran Turismo 7. That's literally the only game they want to play. Will play this game for years and years and years, and that's it. That's it. Like, so there will be people who do that, which is completely cool. But those people will be spending $40 on a car. It's not, I mean, it's the only game they play. That's where they spend their gaming money. So maybe they were thinking about it along those terms, where people who are going to be spending the $40 on a digital vehicle are the hardcore Gran Turismo fans, and there are enough of them out there that we can justify these prices, and that as we know they're going to spend this money, we're going to be just cashing in on these hardcore Gran Turismo fans. I don't know. It's an interesting thing, but this game overall is kind of just, it's been a terrible release. And the reviews for it, the scores, if it was a different game, I wonder what would happen. Like, would people be like, are they going to go back and change their scores? Will Sony be allow them, or like, will they reprimand people if they go back and change their scores? I don't know. But it's clear that this game does not deserve the high scores that it has. And I just want to, full disclosure, I haven't played the game yet, so you can get on me for that. But from everything we're seeing from the news, from stuff like this happening, I think it's pretty obvious that many other games would be severely docked points on their review scores, on their Metacritic scores. People would be going back and changing and revising their reviews on it if this type of stuff was happening. So it's unfortunate, but hey, it is what it is. So if you guys have played Gran Turismo 7, let me know in the comments below, and let me know if you were trying to play during this more than 24 hours that I was offline and you weren't able to. All right, let's move over here to the next topic. And I think it's kind of, it coincides a little bit with the Gran Turismo 7 stuff, where it's kind of, where are we going with the future of gaming? Because it's funny. You think about what happened with the Xbox One. You think about Don Matrick, and he came out and he destroyed Xbox for that generation, seemingly because of his announcements with the always online and the Kinect and all that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, you have to give credit where credit is due. He knew where the industry was going. Like, he was forward thinking, but he just was way too ahead of the curve. Like, he introduced this stuff way too early, because that was back in 2013. And you look where we are right now in 2022, and a lot of the stuff, like the DRM, the always online mainly, we have. A lot of games have that. You look at Gran Turismo 7. So the future in 2013 was projected from Don Matrick just early, and we're here now. And now we see something like this come up, which is Ubisoft Scalar, which is another thing that is going to be utilized through always being online. And it has to do with their cloud-based computing, their cloud-based technology, in order to create bigger worlds that don't rely on a single system with constraints, where you have to use the constraints of the GPU and the CPU for that single console or that single PC or whatever it is. So this is a new thing they just announced, and they showed off this video, and they just kind of talk about what it is, and they feature all the different Ubisoft titles and different Ubisoft IPs in it. And they show Rayman, which I saw a lot of the comments where people are like, this is the first time we get to see Rayman, and it has to be within this new technology video and stuff like that. And they go through this questionnaire, and here is one of I'd say probably the most important question as to exactly what it is, or interview question. They say, when we talk about the cloud, people often associate that with streaming games. I'll be honest, when I first saw this thing, I thought Ubisoft was just opening up like a new streaming service to compete with something like Xbox Game Pass. But then I read through it and realized it wasn't that at all. Continues on here saying, but that's not what we're talking about with Ubisoft Scalar, right? And the response is, exactly. It can be confusing, but we're not talking about game streaming. So this isn't a competitor in any way to Xbox Cloud Gaming, to Google Stadia, to Amazon Luna. It's the difference between cloud streaming and cloud computing. Cloud streaming is a distribution model that improves people's access to games, but it doesn't change in essence what games are or the quality of them. And that's because they're still constrained to the specifications of the console or the PC or whatever platform that they're on. Continue on here to say the game is still being run on a single processing machine placed remotely and then streamed via the cloud to your screen. It's a bit like if you had a console placed very far away and your internet connection is replacing a very long HDMI cable to your TV. What Ubisoft Scalar is focused on is cloud computing. Cloud computing, what Ubisoft Scalar enables, means the processing power for a game isn't tied to a single machine, but a decentralized computation system. The processing is taking place in the cloud. This eliminated the limits of local hardware for players, improves the quality of games, and opens up new possibilities for game developers. So that's actually really cool. Really cool to think about how that's going to be utilized going forward, because it seemingly means we could pretty much have unlimited, endless games with scopes that we've never thought about before, scopes that we could never have imagined, because they aren't going to be constricted to a single machine, as they say here, and they're going to be able to have multiple machines. And I think it would probably enable people's creative output to be even crazier than some of the stuff that we get now. Now, one of the things that obviously we'd have to think about with this is, how do you kind of focus that creative energy when you have a technology that pretty gives you, I guess, boundless access to doing what you want to do? If you can't focus it, games will never get released, and they probably won't be as good as they could be. So it's interesting, because going forward, what does this mean for stuff like single player games that there's a campaign for? And let's say you want to play it, but if you don't have the internet connection, you're not going to be able to play it, which I think overall could be a hurdle for some people who don't have a stable internet connection, or who don't always want to be connected to the internet when they're playing their video games. Or let's say, hey, their Wi-Fi is down or something and they can't connect to it, but they still want to be able to play. Or if, like, I don't know, their power's out, or they have a generator and they're playing a game off of their generator, they're not going to be able to play some of these games. I don't believe that's going to be used through Ubisoft Scalar, through that technology. Now, in terms of this actual game engine itself, they say here that the technology that can work in concert with their existing game engines, such as Anvil and Snowdrop, to open up new possibilities, so they don't have to develop a new game engine for it. And that they are currently working on a new IP that is developed with the Ubisoft Scalar, which will fully leverage the possibilities of this technology. It's a bit too early to go into more details on this project, but we at the studio can't wait to show the world what we're cooking up. And we know that what's coming out next in terms of the Assassin's Creed series is Assassin's Creed Infinity, which I believe they say is going to have a comprehensive single player campaign, but it's going to be like an always online connected style of game. Maybe that's something they're going to be using this technology for, because we know that their worlds in Assassin's Creed are huge. I think they do a really good job with their world building, some of the best in video games. I know people love to rag on Ubisoft, but I think that their world building, especially when you look at the Assassin's Creed games, how beautiful the worlds are, how big they are, how detailed they are, I think they do some of the best in all of video games. And something like this is going to allow them to expand that even more. But then you have to think about the potential drawbacks again of always having to be connected online. We'll see what happens with that. But it also brings me to think about what we heard from Sega and their Super game, and how they wanted to team up with Microsoft, because we know Microsoft is going along these lines too. This isn't something special for Ubisoft. I mean, Microsoft has their cloud computing that they're going to want to continue to utilize to continue to make bigger games and push those out to as many people as possible through streaming, and then eventually use that tech to do stuff like this. And we saw that with when Sega came out and said that they are partnering with Xbox in order to be able to use their cloud technology to make Super Game. And I'm assuming they're going to be doing something similar to what Ubisoft Scalar is going to be doing with this technology. So I think this stuff's very interesting. We're going to have to see how it affects the gaming industry going forward. Right now we have consoles. We have the Series X, we have the Series S, the PS5. And I think that we could potentially have another generation of physical boxes. But if this stuff works and companies want to utilize it, we may be going fully in this direction of streaming, and then having games using this cloud computing technology just stream to our TVs or stream to anywhere that you have an internet connection, which it's good for the scope of the games, but could be bad for other things. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But overall, I think we're seeing this stuff play out. We're seeing that Microsoft was again ahead of the curve with this stuff, because they've pretty much made cloud gaming. They've made the best cloud gaming service. They already made their partnership with Sega, and I'm sure they are also working on other stuff behind the scenes with their cloud computing technology, and we'll see how they eventually utilize that in the future. All right, so let's jump over here to something I found very interesting. Saw these tweets out here on Twitter, and it has to do with a game called Power Slave X Humid, which I believe is an older game for the Sega Saturn. I'll be completely honest, I didn't really know about this game before looking into it when I saw these tweets. It's a first-person shooter style of game for the Sega Saturn, kind of has like those older style graphics similar to Doom. And this was a tweet here put out by Edward, who works for Night Dive Studios, developer for Night Dive Studios. And they talked about how this game has now been updated to run at 4K 120 frames per second natively on the Xbox Series X and S, which I think is very cool. And they are doing this using the Kex engine, which is an engine that is used to kind of like update these older style of games. And Night Dive Studios the Kex engine has worked on, or has been utilized for these following games: Turok Dinosaur Hunter, Turok 2 Seeds of Evil, Forsaken Remastered, System Shock Enhanced Edition, Blood Fresh Supply, Doom 64, Shadow Man Remastered, Quake 2021 version, Power Slave X Humid, and Blade Runner Enhanced Edition. So Quake 2021 version and Doom 64 2020 version. I'm guessing those are the games that we also have on Xbox Game Pass. But that's the engine has been used for those older style of games to update them to be able to be played on the current consoles, which is super cool. Now, what is interesting here is that the Series S gets that 4K 120 as well. And they say here the Series S has a surprising amount of headroom that 4K 120 may be achievable on future KEX titles as well. People are underselling its performance potential, which is awesome to hear, and something that we've kind of known in the sense that the Series S, yes, it's the least powerful next generation console, but it does some great things, especially for the price that you're paying. And I've talked about this before on previous videos. I use my Series S as much, if not more than my Series X, because I have it set up to my monitor up where I film my videos. And it's just easy just to switch over to my Series S. And I absolutely love it. Like, it performs extremely well. The games look great on my monitor and it does what I need it to do. I mean, yes, it doesn't look like 4K, but the games, a lot of like very taxing games run at 60 frames per second. Like, I've been playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Dawn of Ragnarok on my Series S running at 60 frames per second, and the game just runs great. So it's a great console. A lot of people like to downplay it and think it's not a real next-gen console. It's holding back the generations, which clearly is not the case. Even we saw recently with the example of Dying Light 2, where the devs had come out and said that the Series S GPU was holding the developers back, or holding the game back from getting the 60 frames per second. And then a couple of weeks later, they were able to provide that patch to get the 60 frames per second. And I think with the Series S, most games will be able to run at 60 FPS. It's just a matter of like adjusting. I'm not a developer, obviously, but it's a matter of adjusting the graphical fidelity and like things like obviously not having ray tracing and reducing some of the resolutions, which sounds bad, I guess, for some people. But from experience, the playing games at 60 frames per second is significantly better, and playing games at 60 frames per second on the Series S with a lower graphic quality hasn't hindered my experience. I just don't mind it. I think for what the console is, it does great. But he continues on here, Edward, saying that the biggest cost I found on Power Slave on the Series S was the SMAA anti-aliasing. So that anti-aliasing is smoothing, I guess, the jaggies in the polygons and stuff, which at 4K isn't really needed. And we still had 30% GPU time left. Cut that down to something more basic and you got yourself a very affordable 4K 120 esports box on the cheap. Great point. It's something I've mentioned multiple times with the Series S. You think of games like, I believe Fortnite is 120, games like Call of Duty, like even Vanguard has 120 hertz mode, Halo Infinite does, I believe, Overwatch as well hits 120. So these are games that people with an Xbox Series S would potentially go out and just buy the Series S just to play those games because they want to be able to have 120 frames per second. And the Series S, with the price that it is, it's so enticing. You think about in the future when Call of Duty starts advertising upcoming Call of Duty games with the Series S, how that's going to fly off the shelves. And if they continue to put in that 120 hertz mode, which I don't see why they wouldn't, even on like, let's say Modern Warfare 2 coming up, people are going to be jumping all over that, specifically people who want to just play multiplayer and have a great experience and have the smooth experience, have a 120, 144 hertz display. You get a Series S, you're paying $299, you're getting that type of performance, which I think is awesome. And people may potentially eventually be using it for esports as well, like they say here. Now, what else with this is, which is something to note as well, is someone asked about the Series S being a very powerful console, but hard to understand by devs. Someone said, I know nothing about console specs, but the Series S seems to be a very powerful console, but hard to understand by devs. And the dev here responds, the hardware is quite straightforward. This is Microsoft after all. They stick with what's standard and let the software do the rest, which of course they do. I mean, you can transfer your development kind of stuff from the Xbox One to the Series, obviously not including like the RDNA 2 technology and stuff that can be utilized. Then it goes, it's a mid-spec system for the current generation. This can put AAA games in a complicated position with its smaller memory pool. And yeah, of course, there are things you have to work around with the Series S, but in overall, it's a system that transfers quite easily from developing for games for PC over to console, because they pretty much use the same development kit or whatever you want to call it. I don't know the technical terms of it, but from what I understand, developing a game on PC is going to translate very easily over to the series consoles, because they both use like DirectX 12 and all that type of stuff. So it goes on here and someone asks about PlayStation and why there isn't 4K 120 on PlayStation. They say, is the PS5 getting a similar native build? I bought it on PS4 and would love to have 120 hertz. And then the developer responds, for now, no, but not never. We don't have the means to properly QA test PS5 builds at the moment. Xbox One and Series share the same GDK, which made that super easy for us. Then the person asks, again, interesting and understood. Thanks for the reply. Is the engine implementation substantially different from the work done on Quake, which is also built on Kex and does support a native 120 hertz on PS5? Not asking in a swarmy way, legit curious from tech perspective. Then they respond, no tech difference, just a difference in resources available. Quake had Bethesda doing the QA and publishing. Power Slave is just us. So there you go. There's the thing with the fact that they can, I guess, have more QA testers, because the Xbox One and the Xbox Series share that same GDK, and they don't have that available to them, I guess, from PS4 to PS5, which is what I'm assuming would hold them back from being able to have the same experience with QA testing this game going over to the 4K 120 hertz. So it's an interesting thing to see. And what I think is very great is how he clearly just mentions that there's lots of GPU time left, even with the 4K 120, and that this box could be a 4K 120 machine with a lot of these types of games like this. And yes, Power Slave Exhumid is an old game. It has like the Doom style graphics. I get it. It's not like a super taxing style of game. But when you see the Series S being able to run games like Call of Duty Vanguard at 120 hertz, 120 frames per second, like, it's showing you that it's a very good console. It's a very capable console. And it was a great business decision by Xbox to be able to put out a console that can handle those high frames per second with first person shooters that need those high refresh rates for people to be really enticed to use them, to play online, to play competitively and stuff like that. And it's been selling very, very well. So I'm going to leave that there. It was just, I thought it was a little interesting thing to see that a developer has been able to utilize the Series S and get 4K on it. It's another 4K game that is available on the Xbox Series S. So that's it for me for episode number 41 of the Plumecast. Just another great week. Thank you guys again for stopping by and tuning into all my stuff. Let me know what your thoughts on all this stuff is. Of course, like always, love to hear what you guys think. I love to see the conversations in the comments below. And stay tuned. Again, videos coming out all this week. This channel is just a ton of fun to do. That's why I keep doing it, and I'd love to see it continue to grow. And you guys are commenting and engaging with the videos, which is awesome to see. So thank you guys again for watching. Thank you for your support, and I'll catch you in the next video.